Just remember not to say your wish out loud, said Laura. Amy stood by the birthday cake, 7 candles burning brightly, waiting to blow them out. She had a wish in mind, and was wondering how her brother would feel if it came true. Amy's older brother Kevin was a pain in the neck, and boy did she know it. He was interested in all the typical boy subjects, football, action figures to name 2. He saw these as examples of why being a boy was better than being a girl. He thought of girls as being soft, and their games and toys boring. Amy was sick of being told that her toys were stupid and boring, and having to force him out of her room when he decided to barge in, toy spaceship in hand, and start to shoot all her dolls and teddies. Dolls are better when they're being attacked by better toys, he would tell her. Why are you doing this? She would yell, tears running down her face. Get out! He would prove hard to remove, and he seemed to enjoy seeing her upset. Their parents had often spoken to him about his behavior, but it was in one ear and out the other. He enjoyed tormenting Amy, and was in no mood to stop. It was just a few days prior to her birthday that Amy had come up with her wish, and it was down to her brother being his usual annoying self. He was playing with a remote-controlled car, and had driven it into her room. She was playing on the floor, with her dolls and teddies sat in a circle when he entered, and as soon as she saw him, she was demanding him to leave. But he ignored her as usual, and started to drive his car into her teddies and dolls, knocking them over. She managed to pick the car up, much to his displeasure, and threw it out of the room. You stupid girl! You've broken it for sure, he yelled. I don't care. Just get out, you stupid boy, she countered. I just want you to see how much more fun boys' toys are than this boring rubbish, he said, going over to his car. My toys are not boring, and if you were a girl, you would love playing with them, said Amy. I would like a sister rather than an annoying brother. Girls' toys are boring and stupid. What's so fun about dolls? They're my friends, said Amy. Kevin just laughed and placed his car back on the floor, having seen that it was still in one piece. He started to operate it again, only to find that the steering was broken. You have broken it, he cried. Mom, Dad. He left and headed downstairs to show them his broken car. Amy opted to go downstairs too, just to make her case known, since Kevin would forget to tell them that he had been annoying her again. Still, Amy did get a slight telling off for breaking his car, but he got a further telling off for again pestering her. Why does he think my games are boring? Asked Amy with a sigh, as she decided to spend some time with her mom and dad in the living room. He likes action toys, and since your toys and games don't involve action and fighting, he considers them boring, replied Laura. If he was a girl, he wouldn't think them boring. I'd like him to become a girl, even if for just 1 week. I want him to see that my games are not boring. I don't think he would want to be a girl, even if we could make him one, replied David. But I do wish he would leave you alone. So Amy had decided what to wish for when she blew the candles out. She really hoped that it would come true, especially as all her other birthday wishes had come true, though this was due to them being very realistic and within the capabilities of her parents. She took a slight glance at Kevin before blowing out the candles. Did you make a wish? Asked David. Yes, I did, she replied. Good, but don't say anything, for it won't come true otherwise, said Laura. Even as the cake was served, she wondered if it would. Kevin would be in for a big surprise if it did. The following day arrived, and Kevin awoke slightly later than usual. It was the summer holiday, so there was no need to worry about being late for school. He was soon aware that something was not right, for he could feel something brushing his ears and his back. He left his room and headed for the bathroom to do his business, still not sure of what was wrong. He soon was, for when he pulled his pajama bottoms down. Ah! His, rather high-pitched, scream alerted the others, and soon they were in the bathroom looking at him. Kevin, what's the? Said Laura, suddenly trailing off. You're a girl, exclaimed David. Amy came in and saw her brother, who was now wetting his pajama bottoms. Wow. My wish came true, she smiled, her excitement all too clear. Your wish came true, replied Laura. I wished that he would be my sister for a week, she grinned. You wished me to become a girl, exclaimed Kevin. Wish me back now. I can't weep properly without my Willie. For a week? If that is so, then you'll be back to being a boy by next Friday, said David. I don't want to be a girl for a week. I don't want to be a girl ever. Well, it looks like you'll have to be, said Laura. And you're making a mess all over the floor. Step out of the way and I'll clear it up. Kevin stood aside so that the puddle was in plain sight. His soiled bottoms and underpants were still about his ankles. You look really pretty, sis. Love your hair, smiled Amy. Kevin's hair was now long and down past his shoulders. Any girl his age would be delighted to have such long hair, and he knew that most girls did. He felt very uncomfortable. Let's move out here, just so that your mom can clear up the mess, said David. And take your bottoms off, otherwise you'll be tripping up and hurting yourself. Their mom had quickly gone downstairs to get some paper towels from the kitchen. She was soon dealing with the mess. The others had gone downstairs and waited in the living room. Why did you do this to me? Sobbed Kevin, his voice now a girl's one. I wanted you to see what it's like being a girl. To see that it's not boring at all, replied Amy. Is that so? Asked David. Well, perhaps we should give Amy her wish in full. You'll have to live like a girl all this week, do all the things that Amy likes to do. Kevin's face fell. He did not want to do this at all, and worse was yet to come. Laura was soon with them, having taken care of the mess in the toilet, and seeing Kevin half naked, she made a point of getting him dressed. Well, what clothes should you wear? She asked. I wonder if any of Amy's clothes will fit her, I mean him, said David. Kevin looked at his dad venomously. He didn't want to wear girls' clothes at all. I can always have a look, said Laura. Come on, Kevin. You need to be cleaned up too. Amy, who had resumed eating her breakfast during this time, was keen to follow. Seeing her brother dressed up like a girl was something she wanted to see, and she wanted to be involved too. She was about to follow them upstairs when her dad stopped her. Finish your breakfast first, he told her. Kevin was taken to the bathroom first, and his new lower regions were given a wipe down with a clean flannel. Okay, you'll just have to remember to sit down for both now, said Laura. Now, do you need to go again? No, he sighed. She then led him to her room and made him sit on the bed. I'm just going to Amy's room to see if there is anything that might fit you, otherwise we may need to go shopping. Can't I just wear some of my own clothes? He sobbed. With that wonderful long hair? People will see you as a girl and will expect you to wear girls' clothes, she replied. Plus you do sound like a girl too. You're a girl in every way. While she was gone, he looked in the large standing mirror and saw himself. He had to admit that he looked pretty, but he was a boy. He shouldn't look like this. Here you go. Put these on, she said, having returned. Kevin took the pair of panties and looked at them. They've got no. Girls don't have them, since they have to sit down to go, replied Laura. Now just put them on. Kevin may have been 2 years older than Amy, but he wasn't that much bigger than her. It seemed that now, the difference was negligible, for the panties fitted him comfortably. He was still uneasy about seeing nothing between his legs. With the panties on, he was asked to stand up. He then saw that Laura had a dress in her arms. He had seen Amy wear it, but never in his wildest dreams thought he would wear it. Still, it took some effort. Laura had to remove his pajama top and then put the dress on for him, seeing that he was rather unwilling to do it himself. "Well, it fits." "That is good," she smiled. "Oh, we have a visitor." Kevin's face sank lower as Amy came in. He was hoping that she might take offense at him wearing one of her dresses, but she didn't. She was very much the opposite and elated. "You look really pretty," she smiled. "You'll look even more pretty once your hair has been brushed." "Thanks for reminding me," replied Laura. She went and fetched a hairbrush. Amy sat by Kevin and smiled. "I'm glad you look pretty. It's really fun to look nice and wear pretty clothes," she said. "You may think that, but I don't." "You will." "I'll help you," replied Amy. "Won't we, Mommy?" "Do what, sweetheart?" asked Laura, who was back. "Help him like being pretty." "I can't see why not. What's not to like about being pretty?" She sat on Kevin's other side and started to brush his long hair. He tried to fidget while she did so, but it resulted in his scalp being tugged. "Don't fidget. It will take a few minutes without that," said Laura. Soon his medium brown hair looked tidier and shinier following the good brushing. "How about we make it look nicer and put a ribbon in it?" she asked Amy. "A nice pink one," replied Amy. "Oh, don't cry, sis." "Don't call me sis," sobbed Kevin. Seeing his tears, Laura took him in a hug. There. I know you're frightened, and we're still shocked, but we only want you to look nice." After he had calmed down enough, she let him go and just looked at him. "You are stuck this way for a week, and for a reason, as Amy has stated in her wish. So, for now, we just want you to be a good sister to her. You won't be made to do anything that Amy wouldn't do. You'll be treated exactly the same." Kevin wasn't sure about this, but said nothing. The ribbon idea was passed on for now, but there were still shoes and socks to deal with. Amy did have more than one pair, but it was discovered that Kevin's feet were still too big. Perhaps a size too big. "That's a bummer," sighed Laura, after finding this out. "Just have to get you a pair. Amy can have them after the week is over." Soon, Kevin was back downstairs and eating a belated bowl of cereal. As he ate, his week was being discussed once more. "We'll have to think of a name for you whenever we go out," said David. "What about Katie or Kelly?" asked Laura. "Try to keep the first letter." "Kelly sounds nice," said Amy. "What do you think, sis?" "I'm not bothered," sighed Kevin. "I just want this week over with. We just need to get her some shoes and we can then take her out with us," said Laura. "I don't want to go out, not like this," said Kevin. "No one will recognize you, so you don't have to worry there. We can always say that you're a cousin of Amy's and you're staying the week," said David. "And how can we have fun if we stay here all the time?" said Amy. "I'll play with my action figures and cars," said Kevin. "That gives me an idea," said David. He got up and headed upstairs. He was gone for a good many minutes, and Amy and Kevin were wondering what he was up to. Their curiosity was strengthened by the sound of objects being moved. Kevin gave in first and headed upstairs. He found that the sound was coming from his room, and upon entering it, his face fell once more. "What are you doing?" he exclaimed. "Don't worry. You can have them back next week," replied David, turning to face him. He still wasn't used to hearing Kevin's new voice. He had brought a number of empty boxes into the room and had put all of Kevin's toys into them. He was taking them and putting them in the loft. Next week, said Kevin. But what am I going to play with? You're a girl for 1 week. You can play with your sister, he replied. You can be nice to her for once. This can't be happening. It's a nightmare. It's not a dream, replied David. Not if I can do this. He pinched Kevin gently on the face. Kevin sighed some more. Your sister is really fed up of the way you tease her, and it's for that reason that she wished you to become a girl, added David. She wants you to say sorry, and being a good girl this week will be a good way of saying that. But being a girl will be boring. Well, you're set to learn that it's not so. Just 1 week. You'll survive. Back downstairs, plans were being drawn for going out. Laura was preparing to go out and buy a pair of shoes for Kevin, despite him suggesting that he wear a pair of his own. Your shoes will not go with that dress, she replied. You need a pair of girls' shoes. She went out alone, leaving Kevin with David and Amy. I wish you'd wish me back, right now, he sulked. No, said Amy. You need a birthday cake to do it. David, can we get her another birthday cake? Asked Kevin. I can see where you're getting at, but since her birthday was yesterday, it probably won't work, replied David. But as I've said, it's just for a week, and be nice to your sister for once. I believe that is all she wants from you. But Kevin was in no mood for being nice to her. She had turned him into a girl and now he was being forced to live as a girl. How could he like her for that? It was a while before Laura returned, and during their wait, they watched the morning television. Amy had tried to start a conversation with Kevin, but he was not talking to her. He was doing the perfect impression of a very stubborn, miserable girl. It surprised their dad that he hadn't tried to take his dress off. His behavior hadn't surprised him though, and he could sympathize with him in a way, but remembering how he constantly teased Amy made him feel otherwise. If you continue to be stubborn, expect this to be a long week, he told Kevin. Kevin wasn't sure what he meant, but he soon would. Upon Laura returning with the new shoes, Amy's attention was attracted once more. She was aware that these shoes would do for her in a few months, once her feet were big enough, and so, she was keen to see them too. They were simple white and pink shoes with buckles rather than laces, and Laura had guessed rightly with Kevin's foot size. Perfect. We can go out now, she smiled. What do you think of your sister? She looks really pretty, said Amy. But I wish she would talk to me. Laura looked at Kevin, and his face was still stubborn looking. I sense trouble, and it will be you getting it, young lady, she said. I did not ask to be a girl, and I will not be her sister, and I will not be good for her, he protested. If you want to play it that way, fine, said Laura. But you may want to change your mind soon. You've never been good towards her, said David. It's long overdue that you started. Well, we're ready to go out now, said Laura. And young Kelly here will be coming with us, like it or not. And so, Kevin stepped outside the house as a girl. The world seemed so much bigger to him. His hair had been brushed again, just to ensure it looked tidy. He had been slouching on the sofa. He had been reconsidering having a ribbon in his hair, since he wasn't quite used to having his ears covered. He was frightened. Okay, so when we get to town, I'll leave you girls with your mom, said David. If anyone asks where Kevin is, just tell them that he's with me. But I'm here, said Kevin, his voice failing as the realization of the situation dawned on him. Your name is Kelly for this week, and you are Amy's cousin, said Laura. And all this week, you'll be spending time with Amy, doing all the things she likes doing. And if you don't like it, well, hard cheese, said David. They were now sat in the car, and headed into the town center. Kevin looked across and took more notice of how Amy looked. She looked no more girly than he did, but it was obvious that she liked being a girl. She played with her hair, and often looked over to him. "I really like your hair, sis," she said. "A ribbon would look good in it." Kevin turned away and crossed his arms. "I want my hair cut short." "It's too long," he sulked. "No, you're not getting your hair cut short," said Laura. "I'll take you to get it styled instead." "Make her hair look even prettier?" smiled Amy. "Can I have my hair made pretty too, Mommy?" "Of course, Amy." "A late birthday present for you," she replied. "And Kelly, just remember that your hair will be short again in a week." That did not give Kevin any comfort at all. Upon parking the car, they split up as planned and headed off in different directions. Kevin was soon to discover that anything that he truly liked was off limits. If they went into a toy store, they only went to look at the girls' toys. "I want to look at good toys, not this boring rubbish," he sighed. "Remember what you are, Kelly," said Laura. "You like dolls, and I was planning on getting you one." "No. I don't like dolls and I don't want one." "Look. You are a girl for this week, and your sister and I would like you to act like one. Now, by getting you a doll, you will have further reason to play with your sister every afternoon," said Laura. "No, I don't want to play with her," protested Kevin. "If you don't behave, I'm going to make things very difficult for you." "If you think it's bad now, you haven't seen anything yet," added Laura. "Now just be a good girl and do as you're told." Kevin was put on the defensive by Laura's raised voice. He felt like crying. "I didn't want to be a girl, and I won't be a girl." She took him to one side and her stern voice was heard once more. "Look here. You look like a girl, and sound like a girl, and everyone will see you as a girl," she said. "Now don't even try telling everyone that you're a boy, because I doubt anyone will believe you. Now go and pick a doll that you like. You can give it to Amy next week." Kevin sighed and went back to the dolls and looked at them. There were dolls of all sizes, from real-size baby dolls to the sort that resembled infant girls and boys. Amy came over and helped him choose, having been given the nod to do so by Laura. It took some time, but eventually, and only with Amy's help, did he choose a doll. He gave it to Laura and she went to pay for it. Kevin was glad to a degree that he wouldn't be made to play with it until they got back home. But he wanted to go back home. The next stop was a clothes store, and the same one where Laura had got his new shoes from. It was more torture, for she decided to have Kevin try on a number of items. Amy tried on some clothes too, though she was enthusiastic about doing so. "You look really nice, sis," she would tell Kevin as he posed in yet another outfit. In fact, both Amy and Laura complimented his appearance each time. They just wanted him to feel good about himself, but lifting his spirits proved hard. They did come out of the store with clothes. Amy had got a new dress, as did Kevin. "Now, I suppose you think that wasn't fun?" asked Laura. "Would have been if it was boy clothes," he sulked. "Got some more shops we can go to, plus the hairdressers," said Laura, ignoring his comment. "But first, let's go and get something to eat." They went to McDonald's, and they were treated to Happy Meals. Since they all stood at the counter, the obvious happened. The latest toys were actually a selection of one set for boys and another for girls. The person serving them noticed the two girls and went to get the appropriate toys and boxes. Laura saw it coming but said nothing. Kevin just frowned at the sight of the box and removed his cheeseburger and fries. Just like Amy, he removed the gherkin slice before eating. His toy was placed to one side. Amy had already removed hers from its packet and was playing with it. "Sorry about that," said Laura. "But look, it's still got some action feature." Kevin looked over at Amy, who was now playing with her toy, just to show him how good it was. It was enough to win him over, and he took hold of his own and opened it. The next stop was the hairdresser's. Amy had been promised another belated present, and it was hoped that it would show Kevin more proof that being a girl was not boring. "How can you say something is boring when Amy clearly enjoys it?" asked Laura, as they headed there. "She must like being bored," said Kevin. "I don't like being bored," replied Amy. "All my games are fun, until you ruin them." "You wouldn't want anyone ruining your games, would you?" asked Laura. "No," replied Kevin. "It's because of that you are in this situation now. Amy wants you to see what life is like for a girl, to prove that you're wrong," said Laura. "Now, you're going to find out why girls spend such a long time growing their hair. Enjoy your long hair while you have it." Kevin said nothing and proceeded to follow them into the hairdresser's. It turned out that he would have the same style as Amy, and she decided that she wanted her hair put into curls. "Oh boy," he sighed under his breath. His long hair was going to look very girly indeed. Upon entering the shop, Laura had to introduce him. She and Amy were regular customers, though Kevin had been here too, but only as a spectator. "This is my niece Kelly. She's spending the week with us," said Laura to one of the stylists. "Nice to meet you, Kelly," said the stylist. "So, what will it be?" "Just the two girls. They want their hair put in curls," answered Laura. Kevin just sighed once more as he was led to a chair by a sink. Amy sat in the chair next door and looked towards him. "It will be okay," she smiled. "You'll look really pretty." The stylist started by washing his hair in the sink. He didn't think it too bad. "So, you're Amy's cousin?" "You look just like sisters," said Kevin's stylist. Amy was resisting the chance to tell the truth, and upon glancing over to see Laura, she proceeded to say nothing at all. She continued to talk with her stylist, whilst looking forward to seeing Kevin with beautiful curls. Kevin was not feeling bad. He just wished that the stylist doing his hair would shut up, for he was having to make up things to say. He was staying quiet if he really got stuck. "She's not really talkative," said Laura, coming to his rescue. She was just wondering what to do once they had finished. They would be expecting Kevin to be overjoyed at the sight of his curls, but that was not likely. She decided to tell him about this, once he was under the dryer. "Kelly, I understand that you're not really looking forward to seeing yourself with curly hair, but try to look pleased. You will look nice, and I really mean that," said Laura, in a low voice. "Okay, Mom." "Shoo." "Call me Auntie," said Laura. Kevin nodded. After both he and Amy had spent a while under the dryers, they were called back to the main chairs to have the curlers removed. Kevin remembered to look pleased as he finally got to see his long hair with bouncy curls. But it was not easy, for he still felt embarrassed by it. "So, do you like it?" asked the stylist. He merely nodded. "Don't be shy. Just a simple yes will do." "Yes, I like it," he replied, his voice still low. "Okay," smiled the stylist. "Go and join your aunt. She's waiting for you." He couldn't wait to, and upon seeing him, Laura smiled warmly at him. Amy was just walking over towards her too, and upon seeing Kevin, she went over and hugged him. "You look really pretty, Kelly." "So do you, Amy," replied Kevin with a bit of a struggle. They left the hairdressers once Laura had paid, and grouped together outside. Kevin was feeling uncomfortable once more. "You look really wonderful, Kelly." "I just wish you would accept that," said Laura. "I'm not forgetting you, Amy. You look wonderful too." "You both do." "I shouldn't look like this though," sighed Kevin. But you do, and you look wonderful. Be thankful your sister didn't wish you to be ugly. But I don't want an ugly sister. I want a pretty sister who will be nice to me, said Amy. Do you think you can do that? Just be nice to her for once, though your dad and I would like you to be nice to her all the time. Being older than her, you should be looking after her, not being horrid to her. I'll try to be good, Mom. But I'm not a girl, replied Kevin. I know that, said Laura. Let me give you a hug. You'll feel better for it. He accepted the offer and he did feel better. Shall we go to some more shops now? Added Laura. Amy gave an enthusiastic yes, while Kevin never answered. He was still as keen as ever for this week to end, and to be his old self once more. They visited 2 more shops before heading to the car park to meet up with David. Both had been clothes stores, and Kevin was once again faced with trying on more clothes. If that wasn't bad enough, he now sported a hairband in his new curls. Amy did too, thus continuing the trend that they would be treated alike. They arrived at the car park and found David waiting there. Well, 2 pretty-looking girls. I must be lucky to have such beautiful daughters, he said. Kevin was getting tired of being complimented, and his face showed it. Stop saying that I look pretty. I don't want to be pretty. I want to be a boy again. You will be, in a week, said Laura, who was now tiring of reminding him of this. But for now, you are a pretty young girl. I just wish you were willing to behave. Still causing trouble? Asked David. Not so much trouble, but just being reluctant to act like a girl, replied Laura. I've been trying to persuade him to just relax and enjoy it, but his mind is so made up that it's all boring. Perhaps you need to take them somewhere where some excitement can be found, suggested David. Anywhere where girls will enjoy themselves, you mean? Asked Laura. I don't know. First thing is to persuade her to play with her new doll. Kevin was not looking forward to that, but like he would have a choice. His own toys had been stored in the loft, so that option was out. The only other thing to do was to stay downstairs and watch the television. But that plan was soon scuppered. Sensing that Kevin would not want to go and spend a few hours in Amy's room, it was arranged for them to play in the living room. Amy brought down a few of her dolls and sat on the floor in the middle of the room. Okay, Kelly, sit down and join your sister. I'll just get your new doll and take her from her box for you, said Laura. Kevin sat on the floor, with his back turned to Amy. His confidence had improved since arriving home, now that there were no strangers looking at him. Turn around, Kelly, said Laura. Your sister is over here. Yes, sis. I want to see your pretty face, said Amy. Kevin thought for a minute and did turn around. But he made sure that Amy saw a rude face with tongue sticking out. None of that, young lady. Be nice to your sister, if you can actually manage it, said Laura. Kevin was still being stubborn though, and it appeared that it needed something to shake him in order to make him behave. As I was walking through town earlier, I noticed some adverts for a children's fashion contest, said David. I was wondering if our girls would be interested. Dress them up very pretty and who knows, they could win. But Kelly doesn't have a princess dress, said Laura. Oh, but I'm sure we could get her one. This has to be a lie, said Kevin. There is no fashion thingy, and I'm not dressing pretty. Not dressing pretty? What do you look like now? Replied Laura. Oh, you think it's a lie, do you? Said David. Perhaps we should just head over to the department store tomorrow and get you entered. No, 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 exclaimed Kevin. Please don't. Just think about it. You could win, said Laura. Do it for your sister. I suppose the prizes are girly, he replied. It is a competition for boys and girls, so I imagine there are prizes for both, said David. Boys too, groaned Kevin. Can't I just have my hair cut so I can enter as a boy? You'll enter as a girl or not at all, said Laura. But remember that you look and sound like a girl. And I wished for you to be a girl for a week, said Amy. Your sister made the point. Now just behave yourself. I'm sure you can do it. All you need to do is try, said David. Kevin did make an effort for once, and though he clearly showed discomfort, he proceeded to play with Amy and her dolls. He did play with the new doll that had been bought for him too. After a while, in which both parents watched them, not saying a word, Amy and Kevin were offered some evening tea. Kevin's response was that of a boy who was defeated, or appeared to be. Going to the toilet before bed saw more tears pour from his face, as he spent a penny for the second time that day. He had been during the shopping trip too. It's been a tough day for you, hasn't it? Asked Laura. Though you didn't help yourself. Kevin didn't respond, but merely looked at her from across the bathroom. You can make things so much easier for yourself by being nice to your sister, and by accepting the fact that you're a girl for the week, she added. But I didn't want this to happen, he sobbed. Well, it has happened. Your dad and I didn't expect it either, she replied. I'll say it again though. Your sister has been eager to get back at you for ages, and this seems to be her way of doing it. Your behavior towards her has been unacceptable, and despite your dad and I telling you to stop, you haven't. You've been nothing but trouble for her, and we want that to end. Kevin hung his head low. He didn't like these lectures. Actually, if you haven't promised to stop causing trouble by the end of the week, we might dress you as a girl until you do. Kevin lifted his head, terror in his face. No, you wouldn't? What we wish of you is not hard. Just tell your sister that you don't think her games are stupid, and promise that you will not cause trouble for her. I only want one wish. To be me again. Is that all? Sorry, but if you don't change your ways, your dad and I will send you to school as a girl. No, you wouldn't. Then apologize to your sister. He didn't answer, but his tears flowed freely once more. Kevin's attitude had got Laura riled, and she was glad to see the back of him for the night. What's up, love? Asked David, as she got into bed. Kevin. He seems intent on not saying sorry to Amy, even though I've threatened to send him to school in September as a girl. You didn't? I bloody well did. I felt like choking him just now, said Laura. We need to get to the bottom of this. Why does he insist on being horrible to her? It could be someone at school, friends perhaps? Possibly. Some boy who has been brought up to believe that women are inferior to men, said Laura. Just got to convince him that it's not the case. As long as the case for is not stronger, said David. You mean he might be being bullied? Asked Laura. It happens in politics, sighed David. Perhaps he just needs to discover that he cares for his sister. If he does, replied Laura. He probably does, but he just needs to realize it, said David. Amy's wish may be the key to this. Kevin didn't enjoy his sleep that night, for his mind was restless. The words of his parents were eating away at him, attacking his ideals. He was also hoping that he awoke the next morning as a boy, but that was not to be. He awoke to find that he was still a girl, his hair long, messy, yet still curly from the styling. He groaned silently and headed for the bathroom. Remembering to sit down this time, he then went and washed and brushed his teeth. Good morning, Kelly. Ready to start a new day? Asked Laura. She had decided to leave the apology to Amy problem for now. I'm still a girl, he sulked. Of course. The week isn't over yet, she replied. Now, let's get you dressed. Wearing the same shoes, but one of the outfits he had been bought, plus his hair brushed, Kevin once again looked angelic. If only his behavior would match. We're heading back into town today, to the big department store, said Laura over breakfast. The fashion contest, remember? Amy was excited, whereas Kevin was not. It was no surprise. The parents were debating on when to quiz Kevin about his friends at school, believing that one of them at least was responsible for his attitude towards girls. They decided to do it before going out, and David took the lead. Look, son. Don't be mad at us, but do any of your friends at school dislike girls? He asked. We all do. Boys are better than girls, replied Kevin. You all do? Well, what if you were told that you were wrong? No, we're right. Whoever told you this is wrong. Sorry, son, but it is, said David. You may be better than girls in some ways, but there are things where girls are better. It's true, son, said Laura. And secondly, what you are doing to your sister, it's called bullying. You are hurting her. I'm not. I don't hit her, replied Kevin. You don't have to hit someone to hurt them. Being horrible can hurt people too. You make them feel bad. Would you like it if someone started calling you stupid? Answered Laura. No, I wouldn't. Well then, don't call your sister stupid. You're hurting her, said David. Now, about your friends at school. If they continue to tell you that boys are better, tell them that they're wrong. The truth was finally coming out, and Kevin's expression confirmed their suspicions. I can't, he said at last. Laura and David just looked at each other. Why not? Will they hurt you if you do? Asked David. Because if that is the case, then they're bullying you. Kevin said nothing, but his face confirmed it. In September, we'll see Miss Green and discuss it with her, said Laura. We can't let your life be ruled by bullies, even if you do call them friends. Kevin didn't know what to think, but the thought of telling his teacher didn't bode well. Okay, so we've got to the bottom of the problem, said David. Now, as for the rest of the week, we want you to be a good girl. No complaining about your hair, your clothes, or the toys you play with. And if you want to find some decent friends, your sister would be a good one for a start, said Laura. Make her happy, and you'll feel better for it. Okay, Mom, he sighed. I'll do it. He didn't show keenness, but his voice did suggest sincerity. It was the most his parents could have asked for. You sure? She asked. I don't really want to do it, but I'll do it for Sis, he replied. So, no more complaining about how pretty you look? Asked Laura. I promise. Well, come on then. We need to get to the store in time, said David. Amy was waiting impatiently for them and was glad to see them ready to go. Amy. Kevin has something to say to you, said Laura. Kevin went over to her. Sorry, sis. I won't be horrible to you again, and I'll try to be your sister for this week. You mean it? She replied. Yes, said Kevin, his voice low. Really? That's good, because I want us to look really pretty for this competition, she smiled. Kevin wasn't sure he wanted to go that far, but he had promised. When they arrived at the store, they found a huge queue of children and parents waiting to enter. As they joined, a store assistant came over and made an announcement to all those waiting. Sorry for the wait, but you will all be entered, though it's likely you'll have to report back later this week. This was clearly stated on the adverts. Thank you for turning up, she said. There were a few grumbles, for it appeared that some had not read the adverts closely enough. "Oh boy. Good job we live locally," said Laura. "Still wish to enter?" "Yes, Mommy," said Amy. "Yes, Mom, me," said Kevin, still less than enthusiastic. David had opted to stand aside, just so he could see where the front of the queue was. It was close to where the studio had been set up, and saw some people sat at a table. They were filling in forms for each child, and from what he could see, there was also a rota for each day. Already, some children were doing their shoots, and it was clear that the large number had been expected. There were 2 shoots going on at the same time, just to get through the numbers quicker. Even so, it seemed that Amy and Kevin would be made to come back another day. "Likely we'll have to come back another day," he said, having found his family in the queue once more. "No problem. Gives us more chance to find something for them to wear," said Laura. "Not many boys have turned up though," he added. The queue was moving, slowly but surely, and after a few minutes, they came to the front. "Hello. 2 girls I see," said the one person at the table. There were 2 doing the applications, again to speed things up. "Yes. Amy and Kelly," said Laura. "Nice to meet you. Can you just fill in the forms and sign them, please?" Laura filled in the forms, one for each girl, and signed them. She then handed them back over. "Thanks. You'll have to come back on Tuesday, I'm afraid. It will be 2:30 p.m. That okay?" "That will be okay," said Laura. "Okay, girls? We can spend some time looking around the shops." Kevin didn't know whether to smile or not. They opted to remain in the department store for now, looking at the clothes on offer. Meanwhile, Laura and David were looking at the posters for the contest once more. "The prizes are a little better than thought," said Laura. "There are prizes for both boys and girls. First place gets to do photos for the next catalog, while second and third place both get shopping vouchers for this store." "That could make things tricky if Kelly wins," said David. "What do we say when Kelly cannot make it because she's really a boy called Kevin?" "The best outcome would be for Amy to win, or either to come second or third. The shopping vouchers would come in handy, especially as they grow out of clothes too quickly," said Laura. "But above all, I just want the girls to enjoy it." She looked at Kevin, knowing well that he would disagree with that last part. "Just forget about being a boy for now," she said in a low voice. "Just relax." She gave him a hug, just for good measure. His reluctance to be girly was not completely gone, but it had decreased. He showed some enthusiasm when it came to looking at clothes, and even got involved in discussions with Amy on the subject. It was definitely smiled upon by their parents, who hoped that this improvement in their children's relationship with each other would continue once Kevin was a boy again. They didn't count on something happening later in the week that would help the situation further. For now, Kevin was content to play the role of sister, even if somewhat reluctantly. He just now had other things on his mind, such as how to confront his friends when he met them again in September and tell them that what they thought of girls, and their subsequent actions, were wrong. They opted to go home earlier that day, since they had visited most of the shops the previous day. Kevin and Amy were once again invited to play downstairs, and even watch some of Amy's favorite DVDs. The latter didn't appeal to Kevin, but he sat and watched them nonetheless. His lack of interest was apparent, but not questioned. Had he been asked if he wanted to play with his own toys, he would have leapt at the chance, but he didn't even ask about them. When he went to bed that evening, Laura asked him how he felt, and whether he was still worried about school. "It is true that my friends are wrong?" he asked. "They're good friends. If what they think about girls is true, then they are wrong." "Do any of them have sisters?" she asked. "I don't know," replied Kevin. "Maybe not. Perhaps that is the case. But the fact remains, you mustn't be horrid to your sister. But I wasn't, today, he replied. We know that, and we're delighted. But I mean when you become a boy again, said Laura. Anyway, I'll let you get some sleep. Good night. She kissed him on the forehead and left the bedroom. Kevin's third day as a girl was set to be less stressful. It was Sunday, and his parents were not planning on going out. He was starting to get used to having long hair, and feeling the curls brushing the sides of his face didn't bother him as much. He bumped into his Laura on the way to the bathroom, and it was here that she gave him a choice. Now, I know you still feel awkward about dresses and skirts, and all that, but I'll let you select an item from Amy's things today. Kevin would have preferred clothes from his own selection, but he had agreed to be a girl, and he had agreed to behave. Breaking a promise was bad behavior, so he believed, not that he had been bothered about his behavior of late. He went to Amy's room, and found her still dressing. After yesterday, she was becoming fond of Kelly again, and was hoping that her brother would find even more of his girl side today. Laura sorted through her drawers and removed various items of clothing and showed them to Kevin. He looked at them all and gave them some thought before choosing. Amy watched with interest as Laura offered advice. In the end, Kevin chose a t-shirt and trousers. They were as close to boys' clothes as he could find, though the color and design of each had girl clothes written all over. But his appearance did get more girly. Amy wanted to have her hair put up in a ponytail, and she asked Kevin if he would have his hair styled likewise. He agreed, though he was not keen. They eventually headed downstairs together, their hair put up in high ponytails. The agenda for the day was to keep themselves occupied. Since it was Sunday, the television offered little in entertainment unless a DVD was played. David had been up the road, just to fetch a newspaper, and was now trying to find the news among the stories. He eventually ended up doing the crossword. This left Laura to deal with the girls. Amy clearly wanted to spend all her time with Kevin and continue to show him how enjoyable her games could be. With Laura on hand to help, Amy wanted to play with the collection of dolls she had that had super long hair, also she, and Kevin, could style it. Kevin was completely at a loss at what to do, while Amy was already good at simple styles and plaits. Of course, both Amy and Laura were willing to show Kevin what to do, though his enthusiasm was once again lacking. Brushing the doll's hair proved to be the only thing he could do for a while, as he found the plaiting especially difficult. Even so, Laura was being patient and showing him a few times, just to make sure he saw what to do. Shame your hair has been curled, for you could have had your hair plaited too, she told them both. Never mind though. Your hair looks wonderful. Kevin accepted the compliment, though he was glad that he wouldn't be having anything else done to his hair. The ponytail was suffice, and it did feel good to have his ears exposed once more, because of it. Eventually, he started to get the hang of it and made a decent effort of plaiting the one doll's hair. It had taken him most of the morning, and though he felt bad that it had, neither Amy or Laura complained. It took me several days to get it perfect, said Amy. So, you've done well. He smiled weakly and looked at his efforts. It's not easy, he replied. How does it feel to have your hair like this? Like a ponytail, but it doesn't wave about, said Amy. If you were a girl forever, you could have your hair plaited, so you could see for yourself. I don't want to be a girl forever though, said Kevin. I'll be glad to be a boy again. I really am sorry for what I've done to you. Just don't tell me that my games are boring. I love my toys and enjoy playing with them, said Amy. I understand that now, he sighed. Since I'm playing with your toys, do you want to play with mine? You can if you want. Thanks for the offer, but I don't like fighting toys, said Amy. What is good about fighting? I'd rather make friends. She hugged one of her dolls, just to emphasize her point. But it's good guys fighting bad guys, he replied. If good guys don't fight, bad guys will win. No bad guys here, said Amy. Just Jamie, Emily, Katie, Lucy, Becky, Louisa, Jenny and Abigail, and they all like making friends. She was referring to the teddies and dolls that were grouped on the floor. That's all they do though, said Kevin. Making friends is fun though. Friends are nice to each other, they talk to each other, they help each other, and they don't fight each other, said Amy. Real friends do all those things, interjected David. Real friends don't force you to do the wrong thing. Kevin took the point that his dad was making. He was obviously referring to the friends he had at school. Laura was soon giving them sandwiches for lunch after spending a few minutes in the kitchen preparing them. At least we have something planned for tomorrow, said Laura, as she handed out the food. Kevin had entirely forgotten about this, since his mind had been completely occupied with the fact that he was a girl for a week. It hadn't helped that no one had reminded him until now, but he had been a major distraction for all. The zoo, smiled Amy. I was hoping that I might feed my annoying brother to the lions, but he has disappeared. You what? Exclaimed Kevin. Since Kevin has disappeared, we'll just have to take this girl called Kelly in his place, said David. You don't mind coming to the zoo, do you? If I don't get fed to the lions, like Sis says, retorted Kevin. As long as you behave yourself. But you're proving that you can, said Laura. I am behaving myself, he exclaimed. Just making sure, said Laura. The trip to the zoo would set the mood for the remainder of Kevin's week as Kelly, as well as having a profound effect on him. The fact that he was behaving helped a great deal, and he agreed to go out wearing a skirt rather than trousers. The zoo was located on the outskirts and was home to most of the familiar animals. There were also a few rides for the children, plus Pet's Corner. It was a day out that he had looked forward to, and his change of sex since the outing was planned hadn't changed his mind. This was an outing that appealed to both boys and girls. Walking about the grounds, looking at the various animals, some of which seemed more interested in sleeping than moving, was hugely entertaining. They spent several minutes by each enclosure, with Amy and Kevin persuaded to read the information displays. David had also brought his camera along for some souvenir snapshots. He had pondered the problem of taking photos of Kevin as Kelly, since she wouldn't be seen after Thursday. But it had been decided to take photos of her anyhow, just to remind Kevin of this remarkable event in his life. Remarkable, in that he now was building a friendship with his sister. By the end of the day, he would truly care for her. It only took one chance encounter for that to happen, and it caught Kevin off guard. He didn't have to do anything, for there was no chance of him being recognized, but one other visitor to the zoo got him worried. It was the friend that was responsible for his sexist beliefs. The boy who was effectively bullying him and who now had Kevin worried merely by the prospect of telling him that he was wrong when the new school year began. Kevin and his family were stood, watching the meerkats in their enclosure. The colonial desert animals were firm favorites now, thanks to a television advertising campaign, but even before then, their soldier-like stance had won them fans. It was while they were doing this that the boy came over to watch too, along with his dad. He was just yards from Kevin, and the boy-turned-girl looked over and froze. The boy looked and saw Kevin staring at him. He, of course, didn't recognize him, but merely saw a girl with curly brown hair, giving him a worried look. "What the hell are you looking at?" he exclaimed. "Haven't you seen a boy before?" "Oh, but you are a stupid girl." His words caught the attention of Amy, who had walked over to see what was happening. "I'm not stupid," said Kevin, snapping out of his gaze. "What's going on?" asked Amy. "This boy called me stupid," said Kevin, remembering that he was Kelly, and a girl. "You called my sister stupid?" exclaimed Amy. You nasty little creep. It was no surprise that the parents were soon aware of the verbal spat that had started. Hey, you two? What's all the shouting about? Asked David. That boy has called us stupid. He's just like someone else, exclaimed Amy. Kevin heard that and felt bad. His friend was now in a talk with his own father, and while this was going on, Kevin decided to whisper in David's ear. That's him. That's my friend, Phil. David looked at him in wonder, and the penny took little time in dropping. Excuse me, said David, aiming his question at the boy's father. You need to tell your son that calling all girls stupid is not funny. What do you mean? He replied. My one daughter knows your son from school, and he does it all the time, said David. Phil now looked closer at Kevin and Amy, trying to see if he did recognize either. He certainly didn't recognize Kevin, and he didn't recognize Amy, though it was possible that they might have seen each other before in the playground. You can't prove it, said Phil's father. How many other girls has he pushed around? Asked David. Now look here, this is none of your business. If my daughters are being bullied by your son, then it is my business, replied David. I don't know either of them, said the boy. You must go to another school. I'm in Mrs. Stein's class, and you're in Miss Green's class, said Amy. She had worked out that this boy must be from Kevin's class. Kevin was glad that Amy had spoken out, since he couldn't say which class he was in, since his friend would clearly deny it. He didn't want to give himself away either. But the boy was now showing concern, for Amy had clearly proven him wrong. My son is not a bully, retorted Phil's father. So why is he abusing my girls now? Asked David. That girl was staring at me, replied Phil, pointing at Kevin. Because I recognized you from school, said Kevin. Just because you've never seen me before, doesn't mean I haven't seen you before. If I find that in September, your son is abusing my girls once more, I'm reporting him, said David. You're wrong about my son, said the father. Let's go. Leave these goody two-shoes alone. I'll get you for this, said Phil in a low voice, as he headed off with his father. Kevin didn't know what to think. He had just seen the other side of his friend, and he didn't like it. Like father, like son, sighed David. He said he'd get me for this, said Amy. Well, that's it then, said David. He won't get me though, said Kevin. Of course not, but he'll find Amy, said David. I won't let him hurt Amy. I won't, said Kevin. And he'll never be my friend again. Amy smiled at this, and welcomed the hug that Kevin gave her. Kevin had effectively seen himself in his friend, and now understood his sister better. His promise to be a better brother had been strengthened. The day at the zoo ended with Kevin feeling closer and more protective of his sister than he had ever been before. I wish I'd never made friends with him, he told everyone as they sat down in the zoo restaurant for something to eat. Well, you're not friends with him now, said David. No, I'm not, said Kevin. I want some better friends, and I already have one. That's good to hear, said Laura. I think I speak on behalf of all of us, but I'm glad to see that you've mended your ways. I'm going to be the best brother Amy can have, said Kevin. Well, you're due to become yourself again on Friday, said Laura. So, you have a few days left as Kelly. 4 days, said David. So, for now, be the best sister you can be. I'll try my best, replied Kevin. Being a girl isn't too bad at all. You're not thinking of staying a girl now? Asked Laura. No, but I mean, it's not boring, said Kevin. It's fun in a different way. Well, since you still have a few days left, enjoy them, said Laura. Now, how about we get ice creams to celebrate? The ice creams were purchased from the souvenir shop, along with some gifts for Kevin and Amy. Both had opted to have soft toy animals, with Kevin choosing a tiger and Amy, a koala. Kevin's choice was based on his idea that a tiger seemed like the sort of animal a boy would like. But being a soft toy, it could pass as a girl's toy too. They sat on the wall outside eating their ice creams, before heading to the car for the trip home. "So, enjoy your day out, girls?" asked David. "Yes, Daddy," they both said, which came as a surprise. "You can still call me Dad, if you like," said David to Kevin. "I'm a girl for now, so I'll call you Daddy." "Okay then. Just remember that." The trip home saw Kevin think over what had happened that day. He still had to consider what to do in September, when he met his friend again and told him to lay off his sister. But aside from that, he now felt further need to be the girl that his sister had wished him to be. He would make an extra effort to enjoy her games and enjoy wearing girls' clothes. It proved to be that evening, as he decided to play with the doll that he had been bought on Friday. He even agreed to spend the time in Amy's bedroom and help read stories to the toys. "So, that boy was your friend?" asked Amy, bringing up the subject from earlier, once more. "He was," sighed Kevin. "He won't be now. I'll tell him he's wrong." "You still going to protect me from him, if he tries to hurt me?" "Yes, I promise," said Kevin. "And what if he hurts you?" asked Amy. "We'll tell a teacher and he'll be in trouble," said Kevin, though he didn't like the idea of getting hurt, and hoped it didn't go that far. "Good idea," smiled Amy. "I'm so glad you like my games. I like having a sister to play with." "After Thursday, I'll be your brother again," said Kevin. "A better brother. I'll never ruin your games again." "Emma is going to miss you," said Amy, referring to Kevin's doll. "She likes her mommy." "I'll be her daddy instead," said Kevin. "You can be her mommy." "But she likes you." "She's going to miss you." "I'm going to miss you. But you know I'm really a boy. You wished me to be this way for a week, so it's going to end." "I know," sighed Amy. "But till then, you're Emma's mommy." Kevin received the doll and cradled her. He was certainly being taught a few things about being a girl, and now that he had seen what his friend was really like, he was no longer going to be disrespectful to Amy. They spent the evening downstairs, following supper, and the talk was moved onto the photo shoot for the fashion contest. This was to be a test for Kevin if ever there was one. He would have to be Kelly to the max, and show that he enjoyed wearing skirts and dresses. There was still concern over what would happen if Kevin won, unless the catalog photo shoot was done before Friday, but that was unlikely. Kevin offered to stand down and not enter, but Amy was keen to see him involved. "Just enter and don't think about the result. Enjoy it," said David. "If anything, hope that your sister wins," said Laura. Kevin smiled at that. He would cheer her on when she did her photos. The next day, Kevin and Amy were given baths. Since they were not due at the store until 2 p.m., Laura used the morning to get them nice and clean before they headed out. The children were not prevented from seeing each other in the buff either, for they were being bathed together. It had been a while since this was last done, and as they stood facing each other, as the bathtub was filled, Kevin still felt uncomfortable at the fact that he looked like a girl between his legs. But Amy didn't comment. Her respect for her brother had been restored, and she was thanking him in many ways. But it was awkward too for Laura, who was still aware that he was a boy, despite his current appearance. It wasn't too bad once they were both in the tub, filled with fragrant bubbles, for their lower quarters were hidden. Both had their knees bent though, just so that they could both sit down. Once they were washed down, Laura proceeded to wash their hair. Once that was done, they went to their parents' room to dry down, with Laura using her hairdryer to dry their hair. "Well, girls. Today, your dad and I just want you to enjoy yourselves," said Laura, once she had turned off the hairdryer. "And Kevin, we want you to remember your time as a girl with fondness." Kevin nodded and prepared to get dressed. His hair was still curly, though not as much. It was still soft though, and he was getting used to the length. Still, it didn't stop him from wanting it short again. The day's plan was simple. They'd go to town and arrive at the store before the allotted time. They could always look around the store while they waited their turns. Once the photo shoots were over, they would find somewhere to eat, look around some more shops if there was time, and then come back home. Once the girls were ready, they set off, and once the car was parked, they set off for the department store. Amy was looking forward to it, while Kevin was still slightly anxious. Upon arriving in the store, they headed over to where the photo shoots had been done during their last visit. No queue, but the table was still there, plus a waiting area for those who were awaiting their turn. "Come for the photo shoot?" asked the woman at the table. "Can I have the names of the children, please?" David gave her the names, and after a few minutes, he came over to the girls with stickers bearing their names. He put them on their jackets. "Just so they know who you are," he said. "Still got a short while to wait, so have a look at the clothes again." They did that, and Kevin was glad that they were not looking for any for him. He did help Amy find clothes though. But despite their looking, the time to buy never came. The time passed quicker than they thought, and soon they were headed back to the area where their photo sessions would take place. They had to wait a few more minutes, for the girl immediately ahead of them was just a little bit late in finishing. Once she and her parents had left, the camera people called for Amy. "Good luck, sis," said Kevin, giving her a hug. "Thanks," she smiled. While Amy was led to the back of the girls' studio, Kevin joined his parents and sat facing the studio. He was to get an idea of what he would be doing. The studio was all white, and had a number of various props in the one corner. Then there was all the camera equipment and lighting accessories. Behind the scenes, Amy was being prepared for her first shoot. Clothes that would fit her had already been sorted, so getting her changed and prepared for the camera was quick and easy. As soon as she was ready, she came into the studio and was given directions by the director, who was a woman in this case. But Amy's attention was drawn by the sight of her parents and Kevin, who were giving her words of encouragement. The director looked back and smiled too. And so, Amy's photo session began, as she posed in a number of outfits, and used several of the props. Kevin watched on, knowing that he would be doing all this too. It didn't seem difficult. After what seemed like ages, Amy had done all the required shots, and was soon joining her parents once more. Back in her own attire, she went over to Kevin and spoke to him. "Your turn next, sis." "It was fun. I wore all these wonderful clothes," she said. Kevin didn't get much time to talk with her, as his turn came. The director was aware that Kevin was Amy's sister and knew exactly where to look. "Good luck, sis," called Amy. Kevin got hugs from both parents too, as he headed round the back to put on his first outfit. "So, you're Kelly?" asked the assistant who was dealing with the clothes. "Hoping to outdo your sister?" "Not really," said Kevin. "Oh," said the assistant. "Well, we've got some nice outfits for you to wear. Here's the first." The outfits were seasonal, and there were even ones that were for winter, even though it was still summer. "It's not cold outside," he told her, when asked to put on the winter outfit. "It's not about that. The winter clothes will be on sale soon, so people can buy them in time for the cold weather." As well as being helped with the clothes, Kevin also had his hair tidied up, and some simple makeup applied, lip gloss and nail varnish. He was then sent back to the studio to begin the shoot. "Hooray for sis," called Amy, now watching keenly, along with Laura and David. It made Kevin feel better to hear her cheer him. It was helpful that the studio was obscured from the rest of the shop, so that his family were the only spectators. Doing as the director told him helped too, and he found himself relaxing and enjoying the shoot. His family could see it too, and were keen to ask him afterwards. "Why do I suddenly feel as though we have two daughters?" whispered Laura to David. "What do you mean?" he asked. "Kevin, he's completely in character up there," replied Laura. "I wonder if he's still eager to be a boy again?" "He's going to be a boy again, regardless," said David. "And I feel he will be glad to be so again." Even so, he had to admit that it was a girl being photographed. When the shoot was over, Kevin was led back to the changing area and helped back into his own clothes. He was soon back with his family, and looking pleased. "You looked as though you were enjoying that," said Laura. "You're not hoping that you don't change back now?" "It was fun. But I still want my boy body back," he replied. "Told you," said David. The remainder of the day saw Kevin and Amy talking about the photo shoot and which clothes they liked best. It certainly gave Laura further reason to think that Kevin was beginning to like being Kelly. However, he continued to point out that he was looking forward to being himself once more, and that he was only doing as he was told, to make the most of what time he had left as a girl. "I'm becoming a boy again on Friday, so it makes no difference. I'll be glad to be a boy again." They just couldn't deny that he had become more respectful to his sister, and that was all they wanted in the first place. It was just that he was now willing to carry out his promise to be the perfect sister for the days remaining. Any signals that Kevin did miss being a boy were visible though. He would spend time in his room and look at the walls. The posters and furniture were still there, for only his toy collection was missing. "You okay?" asked David, as he noticed Kevin through the open door. "A bit," sighed Kevin. "I miss being a boy." "Well, you've only got today and tomorrow," said David, sitting beside him. "I was wrong about my sister. Her games are not boring, they're actually fun," continued Kevin. "If I was a girl, I would enjoy them. But you are enjoying them." "It is clear to us that you are," replied David. "But I'm not a girl," said Kevin. "I shouldn't be enjoying them." "I don't think there is a right or wrong about that," said David. "I think you've merely found that you like your sister, and you enjoy being with her. You've found a real friend in her." "A better friend than the ones I have at school," groaned Kevin. "I'll tell him about how he abused me and my sister." "It might be best if you didn't say anything about being a girl yourself," said David. "But tell him that you no longer think of girls as being stupid and boring." "Okay," said Kevin. "Do you think I'll find other friends?" "The simple rule in making friends is to be a friend," said David. "I'm sure you'll find some better friends." September was still a few weeks away, so all thought of school could be put to one side. For now, he just looked forward to Friday, and the ability to be standing up. But Amy was keen to see Kevin's girly side for the remaining days. She did so, by making sure her games were girly. He didn't mind them being girly, but he did show signs of discomfort now and again. But he continued to please her, and allowed her to continue. "I think you are a wonderful sister," she said, as they played in her room that evening. "I want to be a better brother, and I will be, I promise," replied Kevin. They played until Laura came in and informed them that it was time for bed. "Well, if the number of days is correct, then tomorrow will be your last day as a girl," she told Kevin as she led him to his room. "I'll be glad to be a boy again, but I will be good from now on." "I'm wondering if you'll miss being a girl," she said. You and Amy have really been getting along. I want to be a boy again, he replied, though his voice was no longer confident. Well, just one more day as Kelly. Just enjoy it while it lasts, she smiled. Kevin smiled back and allowed her to brush his hair before he got into bed. Good night and pleasant dreams, she said, planting a kiss on his forehead. Once again, Kevin was reliving the moment at the zoo. Having seen what it was like to be on the receiving end of the abuse his friend dished out, had made him reevaluate the meaning of friendship. He wondered if this friend would ever learn the same lesson, but in some other way. The memory led once again to Amy and how his guilt had resulted in friendship. He now felt grateful to Amy for helping him learn this lesson and sought to repay her by being the sister she wanted for the remainder of his week-long tenure. When he awoke the next morning, he wanted to see that Amy's final day with Kelly was a good one. He would participate in all games, no matter how girly they were. He started by choosing a dress to wear and even asked Laura to put a ribbon in his hair. Are you sure you want to be a boy again? You're being really girly today, she asked, as she put a ribbon into his hair. I'm doing this for Sis, since it's my last day, he replied. This last day saw them stay at home. Kevin was as good as his word and played Kelly to the best of his abilities. There were a few things that he felt discomfort at doing, but Amy didn't complain. She could see that her brother was doing his best. Kevin was once again looking back at his past and wondering why he was ever so horrid to her. He was enjoying being her friend and wanted it to stay that way from now on. Before the day was out, David got his camera out and took photographs of Amy and Kevin. They stood hand in hand as the photos were taken. The parents looked at them with wonder, for it appeared that they really did have two daughters. It was no small wonder when Amy felt sorry to see Kevin go to bed that night. Thank you for being a wonderful sister. I'm going to miss you, she said. I'll still be here. I'm just going to be me again. Laura watched on as the siblings gave each other a hug. The past few days had seen them go from enemies to best friends, and it was all she wanted. After seeing Amy tucked into bed, she took Kevin to his room. Well, it's goodbye to Kelly, she said. It is, replied Kevin. Kevin's response suggested that he felt sorry to say goodbye to his girl self, and Laura picked up on it. You actually enjoyed being a girl, she said kindly. Don't worry, I won't say a word to anyone, though I'm sure Amy thinks the same. Okay, I did, he said. But I'm a boy. Of course, but I'm just proud to see that you and Amy get along now, replied Laura. I hope you remain friends from now on. I will be her friend tomorrow, and for the rest of forever, he said. Laura just smiled, then offered a hug. Kevin accepted. He then got ready for bed and said good night. One kiss to the forehead later, and he was asleep. The next morning, Kevin awoke, and he noticed immediately that his head felt lighter. He quickly felt his hair, and noticed it was shorter. A quick check between his legs told him the rest. He was a boy again, and he felt good again. I'm a boy. I'm a boy. I'm a boy. He went about the house making his voice known, but stopped when he noticed Amy looking at him. I'm pleased for you, she said, though there was some disappointment in her voice. Kevin stood silent for a moment. I'm still your friend, he said at last. I'm better now. I will never hurt you again. He felt he knew why Amy was disappointed. His parents confirmed it when he arrived downstairs for breakfast. So, you are happy to be a boy again, said David. Yes, I am, replied Kevin. Though Sis doesn't seem happy. You're not causing trouble again, are you? No, I'm not, said Kevin defensively. I'm not like that now. "It's probably Amy missing her sister," said Laura. It was the case, and it took a while for Amy to get back to the routine of having a brother. However, Kevin was true to his word, and did not harass her. If he did go to her room, he did it merely to speak with her, and kindly so. As a result, Amy felt better. The aim of her wish had worked. Kevin was back to playing with his own toys, now that they had been brought down from the loft. However, they remained within his room, and so were never used to torment Amy. The next few days went without fuss, and the relationship between the brother and sister went as well as could be. It was a far cry from the days where Kevin was the annoying little monster. It was then that Kevin made an unexpected move. It was not a step backwards, towards his old self, but more towards his temporary self. His brief time as Kelly had affected him in that he had found himself eventually enjoying it. Part of Kelly seemed to remain in him, for one day he went to Amy's room and asked her if he could play with her. She was surprised by this, but didn't object. "Emma, your daddy is here," she said, handing a doll to Kevin. Kevin took the doll and held her. "I'm going to be your daddy now," he said. "I'll be just as nice to you." "I think she'll be happy," said Amy. "Do you want to read her a story?" Kevin thought about it for a few seconds, and agreed. Even as he was doing this, he wondered what anyone at school would think if they knew that he was playing with dolls. It didn't stop him from spending some time doing so, though he made it clear to Amy at the end that he wanted it kept quiet. "I won't tell anyone," she said. "You're welcome to play in my room anytime." So, for the remainder of the summer holidays, Kevin spent a few days playing with his sister. He still continued to play with his own toys though. However, on one of the occasions that he did go to Amy's room, he made an unexpected request. "Can I wear one of my dresses, please?" Amy didn't know what to say, but went to one of her drawers and found one of the dresses that had belonged to Kelly. They were still too big for her, but she was expected to wear them later, once she had grown a bit more. Kevin took the dress and headed back to his room with it. There, he took off his clothes, and put the dress on as best as he could. Once he had, he returned to Amy's room. "Are you my brother, or my sister?" asked Amy. "Can I be your brother and your sister?" replied Kevin, appearing unsure. "I can't see why not." And so, for the next few hours, Kevin was Kelly, and only returned to wearing his own clothes when the call for dinner came. However, it didn't stop his parents finding out. Laura came up to see what they wanted for dinner, and found Kevin in Amy's room, dressed in a dress. She took a few minutes to say anything. "Kevin, we have no problem with you playing with your sister, but you don't have to dress like her." "I want to be her sister sometimes," he replied. "But only here," replied Laura. "So, what was I here for?" "Oh yes, what do you want for dinner?" When Kevin arrived downstairs for dinner, he was back in boy's clothes. He felt a little ashamed at being seen dressed as a girl, though his parents opted not to say anything. However, returning to school in September would be his big test. Any chance of hanging out with Amy was dashed, not just because he was a boy, but because he was moving to the junior section. This meant spending break times in a different playground. Even so, he was keeping his promise to break away from the boys who had led him to be nasty to Amy. It was something he wasn't looking forward to, but it was the right thing to do. "Look, if they decide to give you trouble about it, tell a teacher," said Laura, as she dropped Kevin and Amy off at the school gate. "I will." "I'm not like them now," he replied. They headed up the path together, and only parted when Kevin took a side path that led to the junior half of the school. Amy was about to start her final year in infants. Kevin wondered when he should let his soon-to-be ex-friends know that he was dropping the sexist attitude. They found him, and were soon asking him how his summer holidays went. He never mentioned anything about his new attitude, but went briefly on about everything else. When it came to entering their new classroom, Kevin was eager to sit elsewhere. If he was to break away from them, it made sense to want to sit elsewhere. But for now, it was not possible. He was still one of them, in the eyes of the class. It wasn't just the bullies he had to tell. But it would happen, and it would get results. It all began during break, when Kevin's friends resumed their regular put-downs aimed at their girl classmates. Kevin was no longer interested in joining in, and opted to refrain. It was noticed by both parties. "Will you ever leave us alone, you creeps?" asked one of the girls. "No, we won't, not while you are boring and stupid," said the ringleader. "Well, it appears one of you has," pointed out another girl. Kevin was slowly walking away, and it was only thanks to the girl noticing that the boys noticed too. Their response was not unexpected. "What the hell is wrong with you?" asked the leader. "Have you gone soft?" "What you're doing is wrong," said Kevin, trying to sound as brave as possible. "Wrong? Nobody tells me I'm wrong," hissed the leader. "I'm not going to taunt girls again," added Kevin. "I don't want to be with you anymore." "Well, if you're not with us, you should join those wimps over there," replied the leader, pointing to the girls. "They're not wimps." The group of girls were watching from afar, and could tell that there was trouble at hand. All they could tell was that Kevin was no longer on friendly terms with the other three. When they saw that Kevin was being shoved around, they knew that there was trouble. But even before they could intervene, one of the teachers on playground duty had been alerted to the trouble, and for now, Kevin was able to spend the rest of the break on his own, in peace. The girls, however, decided to investigate and approached Kevin. "So, we take it you're not with them now?" asked Louise, who was the leader of the group. "No, I'm no longer with them," he said. "Because what they do is wrong." "You didn't think that way before the summer holidays," replied Louise. "Well, I don't now," replied Kevin. "Look, I'm sorry for all the name-calling, the skirt-pulling, and anything else horrid that I did. I'm never going to do anything like that ever again." "You promise?" asked Louise. "Yes, I promise," he said. "We hope you do," said Louise. "Thank you." But while Kevin had gained the respect of the girls in his class, his troubles were far from over. Class time still meant sitting at the same table as the bullies, and they were in no mood for peace treaties. They were out to get him in any way they could, and that included behind the teacher's back. They made snide comments, ensuring that Kevin was the only one who could hear them, and made vile faces. Their goal was to irk Kevin enough to make him retaliate, and in a way that would be noticed. Kevin would get into trouble, and they would get off free. "If they start causing trouble, tell a teacher." Kevin remembered the advice his parents had given him. He had to do this, but it would have to wait till dinner. When the dinner break arrived, Kevin waited till the classroom was empty, and went to speak with his new teacher. "Miss Hatton, I need to talk," he said. "Let me guess, the boys at your table? I did notice the looks they were giving you." Miss Hatton delayed her planned exit and let Kevin explain everything. "So, I've quit their gang, and they've turned on me," he concluded. "I don't want to sit at their table." "Okay, I'll arrange for you to sit at another table from now on," she replied. "Try to keep away from them during dinner." Just to be sure he never got trouble during dinner, the dinner supervisors were told about the bullies. As a result, when Kevin collected his dinner, he was led to a table that was a good distance from the one where the bullies were sat. As it so happened, the girls from his class were sat nearby. "They have turned on you, haven't they?" asked Louise. "Yep," said Kevin. "They were taunting me in class." "We could see," said Louise. "You're not alone." After dinner, Kevin spent time in the playground, in a place where the bullies would find it hard to do anything without being seen. He kept to that area until the bell rang, ending the dinner break and calling all students back to their classrooms. As promised, Miss Hatton found him another table to sit at, which didn't please the bullies. However, it wasn't Louise's table, which disappointed Kevin slightly. He was sat with some other boys and girls though. "So, have you quit being with them?" asked a boy called John. "Yes," said Kevin. "I'm no longer a bully." Those sat at the table listened with interest. And so, the rest of the day went without much fuss. Kevin was just careful to avoid his former friends' attempts to corner him. They had been held back by Miss Hatton after the final bell, and given more verbal warnings. He quickly went looking for Amy, and upon finding her, felt better. They then headed to the school gates, where Laura awaited. "So, how did you get on?" asked Laura, as they made for the car. "They've turned on me," sighed Kevin. "But I have told my new teacher about them." "Your dad and I guess they may do that, but I'm glad you've told a teacher about them." As they headed home, Kevin explained more, including how he had been moved to another table in class. He also told them about apologizing to the girls in his class. The way he talked about girls now further hinted at what was to come. That week, as Kelly had left a lasting mark on him, and having discovered his voluntary cross-dressing, his parents wondered if he was going to ask them to allow his hair to grow out. For now, that question never got asked. Kevin did still continue to play games with Amy, and tried to create hybrid games that utilized both his toys and hers. At school, things were not quite perfect for Kevin, since his former friend was now his sworn foe. Despite the verbal warnings, the bully was not finished with Kevin. Kevin had reported him, and that was required payback. So Kevin had to watch his back from now on. Even though he now sat at another table in class, he tried to avoid Phil's glances. Those he now sat with were slowly making friends with him. This was partly down to him being a former bully. As long as he kept up his promise of quitting bullying, then he would win them over. But the friends that Kevin sought were the group of girls that included Louise. If he were Kelly, then having them as friends would be easy. The memories of that week as Kelly never left his mind, since he really had enjoyed it the last few days anyway. If there was a way to become her again, he would take it. Of course, his birthday was coming up at the end of September. Amy had had her birthday wish granted. Hopefully, his would be too. Kevin was right to think that Phil would not rest until he had had his revenge. Phil wanted to give Kevin a few bruises, but getting his chance was not easy, thanks to Kevin reporting him. So, he sought another way of getting to him. He had already labeled Kevin a girl for showing sympathies towards them. Those sympathies were his key, so he believed. It was during dinner break when it happened. The fourth-year juniors had all had their dinners, since they were first in that day. Plenty of time to hang outside for the remainder of the dinner break. Phil and his remaining bullies decided to go and give Louise and her friends another round of verbal, and this time, they were determined to do a good job. Kevin noticed them in the act, and looked around for a teacher. Much to his dismay, the first one he saw was taking care of other business. Phil wasn't the only creep in the playground. He didn't want to, due to the trouble it would cause, but he wanted to help Louise. He just didn't know that this was what Phil wanted. He walked over to them, and soon got noticed. "Leave them alone, Phil," he cried. "Make me, you girly wimp," retorted Phil. "Too soft to fight, wimp?" Louise and another of the girls were having their skirts and hair pulled by the other bullies. Kevin tried to stop them, but as he did so, Phil threw a punch at him, and it caught him in the face. "You leave him alone," yelled Louise. With Phil's cronies opting to laugh at Kevin's injuries, their own guard slipped, and Louise and the other girl freed themselves. The bullies' laughs soon turned to groans as they received kicks to their shins. Kevin was back on his feet and ready to hit back. He didn't notice Louise coming up behind, so when he went to dodge Phil's next punch, the fist found Louise instead. The scuffle was noticed by other children, and this was how another teacher was alerted to it. Adding to Phil's woes was that his mislanded punch was seen by the supervisor. "Okay, that's it," shouted the teacher. "You're going straight to the head. Hitting a girl, indeed." Phil and the two bullies were certainly in hot water now. As for Kevin, he wasn't sure if he would suffer too. The girls gathered all explained the situation as best as they could, making sure that the teacher was alerted to Kevin's part as a rescuer, not a bully. Louise and Kevin were asked to come along to Mr. Lansbury's office too, just so that the head could get the full story. "Philip Spencer, you are a disgrace," said Mr. Lansbury. "It's bad enough that you've made a habit of insulting girls in a sexist manner, but punching them? Sorry, but I'm going to have to suspend you for this." "I wasn't trying to punch her, I was trying to punch him," replied Phil. "Well, you were out to hit someone, and you did hit someone," replied Mr. Lansbury. "So, Kevin, you're no longer associating with Phil?" "No, sir. I don't think like him now," said Kevin. After further talking, the students were escorted out. Kevin and Louise went to the first aid office to get their bruised faces seen to. "I'm sorry about you getting punched," said Kevin. "I shouldn't have ducked. It's my fault." "I shouldn't have stood behind you," said Louise. "Thanks for coming to help us." "It's nothing," he replied. They headed off to their classroom and went to sit at their tables. Phil was already back, in what was to be his last day at the school for 2 months. His friends hadn't escaped punishment, but they weren't being suspended. However, without their ringleader, they were unable to pose as big a threat. Kevin had some explaining to do when he met his mom later that afternoon. He did tell Amy the story upon meeting her, and she felt bad about him sporting a bruise on his cheek. His parents were keen to hear the story, and wondered what would happen to Phil now that he was suspended. At least Kevin could see out the next 2 months at school in peace. Things were certainly going to be better at school for Kevin and the group of girls led by Louise. Their chief tormentor Phil had been suspended for 2 months for punching both of them. With him gone, his fellow bullies were lost without a leader and never made any attempts at causing trouble. While it should have been good news for Kevin, it wasn't. Though he was building friendship with those he sat with in class, there was only one group he wanted to be with, Louise's. His growing desire to become Kelly again was certainly being made clear at home as he continued to play with his sister, sometimes while wearing some of the clothes purchased for Kelly. He also looked at the photos of himself as Kelly that had only just been printed, and these reminded him further of how much he enjoyed being Amy's sister. "Dave, you get the feeling that Kelly is still here?" asked Laura to her husband. "I certainly do," replied David. "Seriously, that week really made him a better person, but I agree, it seems as though Kelly never truly left." One evening, Laura spoke with him before he went to bed. "Kevin, your dad and I have been noticing the way you behave of late." "No, we're not telling you off." Kevin had been put on guard by her initial words, hence her last sentence. "I'm not being bad." "I'm not bad anymore," he replied. "We know that. We're proud of you." "Then what is it?" "You really did enjoy being a girl, didn't you?" asked Laura. "You want to be a girl again, don't you?" Kevin looked glum as his secret was revealed to him. "I want to be friends with Louise and the girls," he said, tears now forming in his eyes. "But I can't be real friends with them unless I'm a girl." "But you don't have to be a girl to be friends with a girl," replied Laura. "But I want to be a girl," he sobbed. Laura took him in a hug at this. "Oh, my son, if that is what you want, then we'll let you become a girl." "Thank you, Mommy," he replied. "Okay, and for your birthday, we'll get you a new dress. Would you like that?" Kevin smiled and nodded. Only then did Laura realize one thing: his birthday, the birthday cake wish. Amy had been granted her wish, and it was now clear what Kevin was going to wish for. "Amy is going to be so proud of her sister," added Laura. "Now go to sleep." Another day at school. She kissed him on the forehead, then wished him good night. She turned the light off before exiting and headed downstairs. "Love, I've just had a word with Kevin. He wants to be Kelly again," she told David. "So, we guessed right," he sighed. He was looking at one of the photos with Kelly on it. It only proved what they had just learned. Kelly and Amy posed in the photo side by side, and both were smiling broadly. This wasn't a forced smile like the ones Kelly had given in the first days, it was the genuine smile of a girl who loved her sister. "I told him we'd get him a dress for his birthday," added Laura. "But his birthday wish. Amy's came true, and I hope his does too," said Laura. "I suspect he wants to remain Kelly for a good while longer." "You mean as in forever?" asked David. "If he does, it will be like a present for Amy too. Don't tell her, keep it a surprise. If she sees that we've bought him a dress, then she may guess," said Laura. "Though I wouldn't bet against her guessing anyway. She has been playing with Kelly on occasions for the past few weeks." Amy was indeed thinking about her brother's recent behavior. She was undoubtedly happy at how he was now her friend instead of enemy. But his part-time role as her sister had made her wonder how much he enjoyed being Kelly. "His birthday is later this month. I wonder if he'll make a wish," she mused to herself as she slept. However, she decided to keep it quiet and simply enjoyed having a brother who was a wonderful friend. As for school, Kevin was enjoying the peace offered by Phil's absence. Whether he would be different when he returned, he couldn't say. There was a good chance he would have to, otherwise he'd be thrown out of the school for good. For now, he hung out with the boys he shared a table with in class. They were good friends, but he still sought the friendship of girls, especially Louise and her friends. They did speak to each other, but it was usually just greeting each other. All the bad history had been brushed aside, though neither Louise or any of her friends had yet asked how or why he had turned over a new leaf. For now, he looked forward to his birthday, with the hope that his wish would come true. While he was aware that his parents knew of his wish, he pondered about telling Amy. Amy was, as mentioned earlier, getting the hint that her brother wanted his hair long and silky again. "Emma really loves her mommy," she told him as he cradled his doll once more. "She likes her daddy too," he replied. "She likes her mommy more, and so do you," replied Amy with a smile. "I like her too," he stammered. "You want to be Kelly again. You like playing with dolls, and you like girls' clothes." Kevin felt ashamed that his desire was now known to all in the house. "Why are you sad? Don't you want to be my sister?" she asked. "Don't you want me to be your brother too?" he asked. "I want you to be happy, and playing with me makes you happy." "It does," he sniffed. "Yes, I want to be Kelly again. I want to be your sister." They shared a hug, which only made Kevin realize even more why he wanted to make this wish. Kevin's birthday was on a Saturday, so no school. However, the day before, the class had sung happy birthday to him at the end of the day. His reputation in the class was far better now than it had been in the years prior, and this pleased him no end. As for his birthday, it did mean a day out, with a trip to McDonald's for lunch, followed by the birthday tea at home, complete with the cake. Naturally, Kevin was waiting for that moment, but even so, he expected the wish may only take effect during the night. His wish was no secret now, but he hoped it would still come true. David and Laura were aware by now that Amy was aware of the wish too, so the party that evening was done with Kelly in mind. As promised, Kevin was bought a dress for his birthday, though wearing it was strictly for home. The day out at the start of the day saw him wear some of his own clothes first. Even so, as they went looking around shops, he wanted to talk about how he had enjoyed being Kelly. The department store, where the fashion shoot contest had taken place, was one of the shops they visited. The results for the contest had yet to be announced, due to the number of entries that had to be judged. There was still the question of what would happen if Kelly did scoop one of the prizes. If Kevin got his wish, she would be around to collect it if she did win one. Anyway, the day was all about Kevin, and his parents were keen to make the day as special as could be. Upon returning home, Kevin got to try on his new dress. It was a bit tight, since Kelly was slightly smaller, but he was delighted with it. To go with it, he put on a pair of Kelly's shoes, and wore an Alice band on his head. "We want you to know that we love you very much, and that we hope your wish comes true," said David. "Thanks, Dad," smiled Kevin, getting a little teary-eyed. Laura and Amy offered hugs, which he accepted. The birthday cake was presented to him after the sandwiches had been eaten. Placed on a small table, the candles were lit. Kevin stood and looked at it, his hopes on a wish he had yet to make. But before the candles could be blown out, he listened to his family sing the traditional song. They even decided to refer to him as Kelly at the end of it. Once the song finished, he looked at them for a moment, and smiled. He then turned back to the cake, paused to make the wish only in his head, and extinguished all 9 candles in one go. He had done what was required. All he needed to do was wait, and it was one he didn't want to endure. But in the meantime, the cake was served, and Kevin was the first to receive a slice. Some party music was played afterwards, and both Kevin and Amy happily danced to it. When the time arrived for Kevin and Amy to go to bed, for Kevin, he had been awaiting this moment all evening. The former found everyone wishing him good night personally. "Sis, Emma wants to be with you tonight," said Amy, who had made a quick visit to her room to fetch Kevin's doll. "Thank you, Amy," he smiled, taking the doll from her and giving it a motherly hug. "Well, good night, my new daughter," said Laura. "Good night, son," said David. "Come on, Amy, you need to go to bed too." Amy was reluctant. She wanted to see the moment Kevin changed, but she wasn't getting the chance. "You can see your sister in the morning," said Laura. "Good night, Kelly." "Good night, Mommy," replied Kevin. The following morning, Kevin awoke, his hopes high. As he sat up in bed, his heart leapt as he felt silky hair on the back of his neck. Reaching to feel it, Kevin's eyes teared up as he felt the silky strands of his long hair brushing the back of his pajamas. Kelly was indeed back. She got out of bed and looked at herself. Her pajamas were different, now girly in design, but that was not all. Her room was now decorated for a girl too, and her emotions just overflowed there and then. "I'm a girl again. I'm a girl again," she cried. Her cries of joy were heard elsewhere, and Amy was the first to investigate. She saw Kelly, and the two sisters were soon hugging each other. They were still hugging when David and Laura entered. Seeing their parents, they parted and looked at them. But Kelly was euphoric and ran to Laura, who crouched to offer a hug. "Your wish did come true," said Laura, as they hugged. "It did." "I'm Kelly again, and this time forever," replied Kelly. She did offer her dad a hug afterwards, and duly received it. Meanwhile, Amy had finally turned her attention to Kelly's room. This in turn got Laura to notice it too. "Wow, your wish has done a lot," said David. "It's like you were never Kevin at all." "But I wasn't," smiled Kelly. I wished I had been born a girl. So, it's altered reality, said Laura. But if that's the case, why can we still remember Kevin? I have no idea, said David. What about others? Are they like us, or have been affected? Before they went looking for answers, there were two girls who needed to get ready for the day, even if the day was Sunday, where there was usually nothing to do. Kelly now had a good selection of clothes to choose from and enjoyed looking at them during a search for her outfit for the day. She also enjoyed having her hair brushed by Laura. Well, this is going to save on barber's costs, said Laura. I assume you don't want your hair cut now? No, I love my hair long and pretty, said Kelly. Amy was sat by her and awaiting her turn. Just listening to Kelly talking about loving her long hair made her feel happy. Okay, all done, said Laura. Kelly stepped aside and allowed Amy to get her turn. That day, they decided to play in Kelly's room since it now appealed to Amy's tastes. Amy gladly talked about it, and Kelly was happy to look around again, having admired it several times already. Thank you for becoming my sister, said Amy. I'm really glad you got your wish. Me too, smiled Kelly. Thank you for your wish to make a girl during the summer. You helped me realize what a pig I was, and how good it is to be a girl. Yes, being a girl is fun. They spent all day playing, only coming down for meals. Neither David or Laura complained, as they appreciated having children who got along with each other, as good friends should. They had been finding examples of how reality had been altered. It still didn't answer why they were unaffected, but in a way, they were glad. The main examples of the reality shift were in the photos on display. In each and every case, Kevin had been replaced by Kelly. The only photos unaffected were those taken during that week when Kelly really did exist. The next day was to be an eventful one for Kelly. It was to be her first day at school, and it would reveal some interesting changes, all of which were welcomed warmly. She now had a new school bag, which now reflected her new girly tastes, as well as being able to wear a skirt as part of her uniform. Girls had choice of skirts or trousers. But those changes were instantly overlooked, since the main ones concerned her friends. From the minute she and Amy walked up the path together, towards the school, they were greeted by several girls. The first lot were Amy's classmates, and though they did greet her first, they also greeted Kelly too. The reality had altered to include Amy's friends as Kelly's too. But that was not all. Kelly was soon speaking closely with Louise and her friends. There was no mention of Kevin, but Kelly wasn't bothered. She was now part of Louise's group of friends, and it felt brilliant. Furthermore, Louise did say hello to Amy too, thus confirming that these new friendships had been made a few years ago. Before heading off to their parts of the school, Amy turned to Kelly and smiled. We've got a lot of friends now. Yes, and it feels wonderful to have them. Being a girl is certainly not boring. Of course not. Well, see you later, sis. See ya, replied Kelly. As she waited for the bell that called students to their classrooms, she was once again met by Louise and her friends. So, how was your birthday? Asked a girl called Charlotte. Sorry, I couldn't make it. This caught Kelly off guard, since none of them had come to her party, or had they? She hadn't really been thinking too much of how the reality had changed the past. But now she thought about it, it had happened apparently. It was wonderful. I got a pretty new dress too, replied Kelly. I'll have to wear it for you. Yes, it was really pretty, said Abigail. I want her to wear it at my party next month. Kelly was left to feel bad that Louise and the others hadn't really attended her party. She would definitely be inviting them to her next party, though that was a long way off. As for Abigail's party, that was a no-brainer. She was certainly going to that. Despite this, she couldn't deny how happy she felt to be with Louise, Charlotte, Abigail, Katie, and Sharon. Upon entering their classroom, she sat at their table and felt content. No one in the class seemed aware of Kevin's absence, including Phil's friends. Phil himself was still absent, due to his suspension. However, the reason for it was the same. By now, both Louise and Kelly's bruises had faded, but the incident still lingered on their minds. Kelly thought back to the incident, though it now saw her among the girls instead. However, she had stood up to Phil, and much like the original version, had avoided his punch only for Louise to get it instead. Louise continued to blame herself for taking the hit, by being in the wrong place. The day couldn't have gone better, with Kelly now feeling like she very much belonged. She spent all her time with the girls, including sitting among them during dinner. When the time to go home came, she had them for company all the way down to the gates. She did wait for Amy first, and was eager to speak privately with her and her parents. After saying goodbye to Louise and the others, Kelly and Amy joined Laura in the car, and they had loads to talk about. "Wait, how can those girls have attended your party?" asked Laura. "We were there, and it was just you and Amy." "But I can remember it," said Kelly. "Okay, but this is all a lot to take in," said Laura. "Your wish has changed the past in many ways." Upon arriving home, David found himself dragged into the conversation. "Okay, so if your new friends were here on Saturday, then they may have had their photo taken," he said. "I'll just go and get the camera." He got the camera and checked the photos that he had taken on Saturday. He really had taken a few. In doing so, he got the shock of his life when the new reality had affected them. "They did come to the party," he said, his disbelief clear. He showed the photos to the others, and they too were amazed. "Okay, this is going to take a while getting used to," said Laura. "But as for this party next month, you both can go." Getting used to the new past did take some getting used to, but at least the future was not a problem. Kelly had had few friends as Kevin, but now had more than she could have imagined. She wasn't complaining either. When Phil came back to the school, following his 2-month suspension, it was clear that he also no longer remembered Kevin, and so no longer had a vendetta against him. None of the girls were aware that his dad had also been given some harsh words too concerning his sexist views, albeit from the police. Both father and son were now having to reconsider their views or face further punishment. "Well, I think he remembers me," thought Kelly, as she watched Phil take his seat in class. The new me, that is. Phil was looking less like the egotistic bully that Kelly remembered, and that was good. He was on a final warning, and any further signs of trouble from him, and he would be looking for a new school. As a result, his behavior improved, but his reputation would hamper his hopes of finding redemption soon. "I hope he learns that girls are not boring and stupid," said Kelly to Amy one afternoon. "Thank you for teaching me that." "My pleasure, sis," smiled Amy. "As for Phil, do you want to make a wish for him?" "I don't know. It's just a long time before we have another birthday." "Well, our wishes came true," said Amy. "They certainly did," smiled Kelly. "Now about your prize? Is Mommy going to spend them on both of us?" "She said she would try," said Amy. "I really want a new dress for that party." Amy had won the 3rd prize from the fashion shoot contest, which meant some shopping vouchers for the store. Kelly hadn't placed, but Laura had promised to divide the prize between them. However, both had been sent a selection of the photos they had done, and they now took pride of place in an album. Whenever Kelly looked at the photos, she admitted happily that she really enjoyed wearing all those pretty clothes. Thanks to her birthday wish, she could wear pretty clothes all year round. For Amy, Kelly was a very belated, but extremely welcome, birthday present.